Well, Karen, thank you so much for joining me on the Difficult Student Podcast. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Karen Bures, and I'm KB Teach on TikTok. And I have been in the intensive behavior world for a very long time now, the last 12-ish years in the education system, and working as a para and then the lead instructor of an offsite behavior program for the district in the town that I live in.
Mhm.
And this last year, I have transitioned out into the executive director position at a nonprofit after school program that serves students that have those big behaviors that need that skill building. In an after school program, a lot of our students typically aren't able to sustain involvement in those programs either. And so the same kids that we're talking about struggling in school are also struggling in those programs. And so this was a way for us to provide further skill building outside of the school day, to hopefully help them feel more successful in all areas of their life.
Yeah. What inspired you to start that after school program? What was it exactly?
Well, essentially, um, in my work in the offsite behavior program, I became an advocate for not using restraint and seclusion
Mhm.
with students. I'm in the elementary world. And we took our restraint and seclusion from 17 down to 1, and got a lot of accolades for that. And I think we just ran into an administrator and a system that wasn't ready to shift yet, and had I think just struggled with the idea of like not having restraint and seclusion as a tool to use.
So
Uh,
this is Gen Ed. We're talking about Gen Ed here with
no,
restraints,
special education.
special education. This is a whole special education facility.
Yeah.
Okay, just to be clear. Okay.
Yeah. So I was asked to sign a letter of directive saying I would stop talking about not restraining or secluding my students. And I couldn't really morally or ethically do that.
Mhm.
That's like our whole job, is to try to avoid that and build skills and avoid those escalations. And so I left, and my team eventually left with me, and we started this program.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And
Yeah, it's been really awesome. It's been really
yeah,
neat.
and it's been how long? How long have you been doing the program
This
for?
just this last year.
Okay,
So
so
it's
it's
new, but we got there was a large grant from the Oregon Department of Education. So we've been we've been operating under that. And then
yeah.
hopefully we can continue there. We're collaborating with the schools, and we're getting a lot of positive feedback, and they're seeing like the skill building that we're providing is having an effect in the schools. And
So this is a any kid could join this after school program or only students with IEPs?
nope, any kid. It tends to be focused on the kids, not with an IEP necessarily, but with some higher needs
Mhm.
that don't really have access to those programs. And it's also free. So a lot of families that can't access that for financial reasons as well. There's an opportunity with us there too.
Okay.
That was
Okay.
bad wording.
No, that's fine. Cool. So anybody can join the program basically.
Yeah.
You're at how many sites?
I'm at one elementary school, but we serve 3 schools in the district,
Okay.
roughly,
And,
due to
and
busing. I wish it was
how,
more, but
yeah, how many kids are altogether are you serving?
we have 20, a potential for 20. Right now we have 18.
Okay. And run down like what does a day look like in your program? Like
Yeah.
school ends 3 o'clock. Then what
Yep.
happens?
Yep, school ends, they come in. We have kind of a slow start, so like warm up bins with like STEM activities that they can, work on as they all, because they're coming from different schools and the buses, there's kind of a staggered entry point. So like bin stuff that they can work on. And then we have like a group, it's not morning meeting, but the same idea of like a group check-in.
Yeah.
And then we go out to recess. And then when we come back in, we alternate between a community skills and an academic station. And so community skills is that social emotional learning. So they get that every single day. And then it's I separate it from like there's a whole theme every week. So maybe like a skill deficit that I'm noticing, like maybe we're getting into a lot of disagreements on the playground. My social emotional learning for that week will all be geared towards building skills
Yeah.
on conflict resolution on the playground. So
Good. That's
yeah, and then they go home.
great. And the program's for 3 hours? How long
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah, it's
3
about
hours?
3
Like
hours.
3 to 6 or something?
Yeah.
Okay. And so they're learning all these skills,
Mhm.
um, conflict resolution and how long does that last? So you're teaching these skills for so I'm trying to get a picture. So the way I understand it, they get in there, it's 3 o'clock, they're in their bins, and then
Yep.
after that you said they're skill building, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so for skill building, that would be from a certain time to another time, like
Yeah,
30
it's roughly
minutes, 20
like
minutes.
I wanna say our stations are like 20 minutes to 30 minutes,
Okay, so if
is
I'm a
kind of.
student that I'm in a station and I rotate from one group to another, is that
No, we have one station and then we'll have a brain break and then we'll have another station, we
okay?
sort of set it up, but there's 3 of us on the team, and so we'll, kind of strategically place if we're in a community skills group, we'll strategically place kids in different groups. If we're in an academic group, because we serve grades 1 to 3, we have different academic levels, and so
Yeah.
we structure the academic activity to meet their instructional level.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty exciting. You
It's
said
really
that,
exciting.
yeah, you said that, the schools are saying that they've seen a noticeable difference in the
Mhm,
students that you go to your program.
mhm.
That's what's going on over there. Okay.
Yeah.
What exactly are they saying?
Well, so like a lot of our kids, there's a lot of kids that have ADHD. And so we've been trying to work on executive functioning skills, visuals that we can like bring into the schools that help, introducing flexible seating options, movement breaks. And things like that that we can then we are giving that information to the schools and then they're
Okay.
incorporating it into their environments.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that they've probably seen is the self-regulation. We spend a lot of time building self-regulation skills. So how to use a break, when to use a break, how to come out of the break once we've taken a break, all of those things. So I think that's probably the largest impact that the schools are voicing, but also because they have more self-regulation, they're also accessing their academics in school.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't call us an academic environment. I'm working on building some of those foundational skills and building confidence and like some of our kids, there might be a specific academic that's a trigger, and then I'm using collaborative problem solving and trying to get to like what's hard about this particular academic so we can build some supports around it.
Yeah.
So those are the two things I would say is that they're noticing self-regulation and they're more able to access their learning in the schools.
See, I've never seen that before where like an after school program is making such an impact that that the school is saying, hey, you guys doing a great job. And then I've never seen, like you said, that you give the school like skills. You're saying, okay, this is what we're doing
Mhm,
here, we would
mhm,
like you to try to implement it at
mhm,
school.
mhm.
And that's usually not the case. Usually the after school program is a place where they're- I hate to say it, but you just dump the kids there and
Yeah,
they're there for 3 hours
right,
and there's no real homework help really. They're just
right,
there and they
right,
play a little bit of sports and then they
right.
go like a babysitting kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we're, providing a unique need in the community that hasn't been there before, and, I think part of it is because I also ran the offsite behavior program. I think the schools that we're working with also know my reputation and know my work and know what I'm doing in there too. So that has opened up the door for some collaboration because they've already worked with me in different, a different capacity, but I'm essentially doing the same thing that I was in the offsite behavior program, just after school instead of during school.
Yeah, so the offsite behavior program, what exactly would you do there?
I mean, literally just about the same
The
thing.
exact same thing.
Yeah, so it's kids that I mean, I know that you've probably seen all over TikTok too, like the disruptive students in class.
Mhm.
And there's a continuum of care process. And so the kids that would eventually move to the offsite program were those tier 3 kids that all of the interventions were not really working in the school. And so then they would move to our program and we would work on it in a smaller environment and then transition them back into the schools.
So what would you say is what would you say how when you're working with students like that, working with students who they're placed in your program now, what works best with them? How do you help them? What kind of
Relationships.
skill building relationships? Let me hear
Relationships. It's the I know you
building
know
building
this.
relationship with students with difficult behavior, but I
Yes.
want to hear from you.
It's so
um,
true. It's so true, and they
yeah,
are used to being identified as, like, the problem in the room or in the school. Everybody knows them,
yeah.
and some people have, like, visceral reactions to them, and those are my kids, and they know that they're my kids, and so I think, like, the relationship that I build with them is the foundation for all of the other work. If I didn't have that relationship, the skill building and the academic support and all of that wouldn't be anywhere near as effective.
So how do you build your relationships? I know what I do, but how do you build your relationships with your students with difficult behavior?
I think I don't know if there's a specific technique that I use. I think I just like everybody is seen, everybody is valued. I'm really playful with them. Even if we've had an escalation or a big behavior, I'm not resentful. I'm not, I feel like I'm just a safe adult. I'm really, really consistent so they know what to expect with me. I have high expectations. It's not about not having expectations. I have incredibly high expectations. But I consider myself a warm demander. So really, really focused on loving them and caring about them and listening to them and incorporating their voice into my planning, and holding boundaries and teaching, teaching accountability and teaching how we repair and restorative and all of that other stuff. Like it's all of it.
Yes, yes. So why do you think that educators, some educators, not all, but some educators don't understand that? They don't get that building relationships with students, especially students with difficult behavior, will is like the key to almost the key to everything. Like if you
Yeah.
could do that, if you could do that, then when you teach your academics, you're not going to have any problems, or you'll
Right.
have less problems.
Less problems, significantly less problems. I think that we have a lot of dysregulated adults right now. I think the system is gnarly. I think the class sizes are too large. Administration. You sound like a good administrator, so I'm delicately not going to try to.
No, no, be honest. I've seen some of your TikToks where
There
you're
can
talking
be
about
some problematic.
admin. You're talking about admin. Go ahead. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
No,
always the funny thing too is that looking back now, like those feel funny to me, and then people will like DM me like, "Oh my gosh!" I'm like, That's maybe more problematic than I thought it
yeah,
was. But there are some problematic administrators out there. Um, Teacher pay is absurd. Para pay is even more absurd.
right.
And so I think there's those systemic things make the job really, really, really challenging. And when you have dysregulated adults who are at capacity, they are also they're not in their prefrontal cortex either. And so I think that when you're looking for like, I just don't know what to do, um, and these kids do not make it easy. They're not it's
No,
not easy. It's hard work. And I think without training and without that mind shift, it just feels like that's too much in their classrooms right now,
yeah, yeah, and
as sad as it is.
yeah, and I was just talking with somebody earlier, and I was telling the person, I was like, it almost seems as though they're rigging the system, like they're doing this on purpose,
Yeah.
like this whole system of less resources. Like we all know we need more psychologists at our school. We all
Right.
know we need more PSWs and
Right.
more counselors. We all know that. We all know we need more. loving, caring people on our campus to help our students social emotion. We all know
Right.
this. Therapy, we all get it.
Right.
But there's no funds for it.
Right.
There were most schools are under, understaffed.
Mhm.
You got a nurse that's there 1 day a week
Right.
or 2 days a week.
Right.
Your psychologist is there twice a week.
Right.
PSW is there once a week, and so it almost. I mean, we all know what we need.
Right.
Everybody knows, but
Right.
we don't get it.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
And I think, like, that is what I wish that teachers were focusing on instead of the kids. There's a lot of focus on, like, the kid is the problem, and it's like, you could remove that kid and you'd still have too much work, not enough planning time to do like, it
yeah,
feels like that might be the answer, but that is not the problem. That's the low-hanging fruit problem, but
yeah.
not the overall systemic problem.
Mhm.
And it's because all of those students are my students, it's really hard for me to see teachers on this app kind of come at them. Like that's
Yeah,
really difficult for me. Because
definitely.
I know how awesome these kids are, if given the chance, if given the right supports.
Yeah.
They're missing out on some awesome little humans.
The back to the app part, I feel like, I try to put out as much positivity
You
out there as
do.
possible. Like, I don't really talk about, like, anything really negative at all. I don't think I bring up anything negative. It's always like, okay, positive, here's a tip, here's something.
Right.
And, I know that if I talked about negativity, I would have blown up, like,
Yeah.
blown up.
Yes.
Like, I would have been like, if I just continue to, like, just make a negative video toward students and student behavior and write them off, or
Yep.
say something clever to make it funny or whatever,
Yep.
I'd blow up. I
Yep.
would blow up. And it's sad that those are the videos that get pushed out,
Yep.
to the audience,
Yep.
and then it makes it seem as though that's how everything is
Yeah.
just,
Like, it's so loud that you're like, do all teachers really think this, or are those just is there like a handful of creators that have just had this platform? I
I want
yeah,
to say that there's a handful of creators who have this platform who have been pushing that stuff out, and I don't think all teachers are like that.
I
I
really
feel
hope
like
not.
every teacher that I've interviewed so far, every educator that I've interviewed, we pretty much the same thing. Like, we need to love these kids, we need to care for
Yeah.
them, we need to help them out, um, build relationships with them is
Yeah.
key. All these things that we're talking about right now are the
Yeah.
same things I've been talking about.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I want to make this podcast, is like, okay, let's talk to as many people as possible. Let's
Yeah.
put these videos out. Let's show the world that there are people who care for students, who love their job, and who are trying their very best. Yeah, we all have rough days. Yeah,
Yeah.
we
For
all
sure.
we all go through it. Everybody goes through it. But in the end, we're here for the kids, and
Yeah.
for the most part, those are the teachers that I've encountered.
Yeah, I feel like it's the equivalent of, like, the teacher, like, how the staff lounge can get a little gnarly
Yeah,
sometimes?
good. Yeah,
Like,
good.
that's what's happening
Yeah,
on this app, because when I
yeah,
think about all of the people that I'm working with, there's a couple teachers I'm like, "Yeah, they don't get it." But the majority of the people that I work with absolutely are in alignment with how I feel about it too. So I feel like maybe we're just in the teacher lounge at TikTok.
yeah,
I want out of
yeah.
it.
The teachers, though, that or the educators that are negative are the loudest.
Yeah, like,
They're the
really loud.
loudest, and some people don't like to have an opposing viewpoint because they feel like they're gonna get some sort of, I don't know, like,
Right,
pushback. I don't know, they just don't want to oppose the
right,
loudest negative teacher or
right,
educator.
right.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that was
Well,
never me. I was like, "Oh, no, no, I'm gonna speak up.
I
Let's."
know. Well,
Yeah,
and that's why I eventually started, because I was just watching for a really long time, because I have no intention of being a content creator at all. But I just kept watching video after video after video, and they're, like I said, they're talking about my babies. And
yeah,
so I was like, I can't not say anything. Like, I can't let that be the loudest voice in the room.
yeah,
And it still is, because I'm not a content creator, so I don't put out particularly inflammatory videos. So, but I also feel like like kids are on the internet, families are on the internet, like there has to be opposing voices that are like, no, this isn't how we all feel.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I created mine. I did this a year ago. A year ago, I was like, all right, let's I've always wanted to do something like this. Like, okay, let me
Right.
make videos. I've always wanted to do something like this, and it just never took off. I was like, okay. I started, stopped it, started, stop it. And I go on TikTok. TikTok came out, and I was like, man, there are so many negative
Mhm.
videos out there about education and
Mhm.
quitting the job and
Right.
being happy, walking out happy, like I quit the job, haha, and you're still teaching, ha ha ha.
Right.
And I was like, wow, let me just share all of my everything I know, I'm just gonna share it.
Right.
And so I started making those videos over and over and over, and
Right.
that's why I do what I doing now, so
Right. And it's like it's a hard gig, right? Like we all need inspiration and we all need to collaborate. And I can't tell you
yes.
like how many videos of yours I've watched and thought like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea." Like, yeah, like even as simple as like greeting them at the door. Like I feel like I'm a loud personality and so I've always greeted my students, but not necessarily particularly at the door. And so
Mhm,
that was a shift that I made. And
mhm.
so I really just, I don't know, like I like hearing little tips and tricks from other educators
Yeah,
that, will help me in my own instruction.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This app is very interesting. TikTok is
It
really
really
interesting
is.
app. And there's times where I feel like, okay, this video's it. This
Right,
video is gonna go viral. Like this one
right,
is it. And it's positive. It's always positive, right? It's always
right,
positive. And then it gets like I don't know, 500 views or
right.
like 1,000 views. I'm like, what? But I made a video. One time I made a video about what was it? Like happy that we were gonna go on spring break, and it was this lady. It was like a lady dancing or something like that. I put it on Instagram and TikTok, and it got like something like 3 million views on
Yeah.
Instagram because I was happy that vacation was like,
Yes. Yes, like,
like
my
oh
biggest one is not 3,000,000, it's not viral or anything, but it's of it's like one of those, like, template things, I don't know what
yeah,
is it called? Yeah,
or was
yeah,
it
like, there's a cat
yeah
dancing on it, I don't
yeah
know.
yeah yeah
And it's about, like, making visuals for a team that doesn't use them, and, like, that's probably my most negative TikTok that I've made, and that's the one that has the most views, and it's infuriating to me, and even a couple times, like, I've paid for a couple promotions thinking, like, "This is important information to get out there," and it's, like, 12 likes.
You know what I've noticed about that? Because I did that one time.
Yeah,
I uh I paid for a promotion one time. I forget what
yeah.
video it was.
You're
I
like,
did it
"It's
once.
$7, I'll do it," like,
Yeah.
no big deal.
Then I noticed that right after that, all of my videos are tanking. Right
Yeah,
after the paid promotion, it was almost like they wanted to be like me to be like, all right, pay again, keep
yeah,
paying, and we'll keep promoting your video. If you
yeah,
don't
that's
pay
a really
us,
good point.
yeah, if you don't pay us, then we're gonna not show your videos to anybody.
Right, right.
And that's what I thought about
Right,
paid promotion. I was
right.
like,
Well, it didn't work anyway, so I thought, "Well, that didn't work."
yeah, uh,
If it doesn't work, don't keep doing it. That's the other thing about behavior, right? Like,
yeah,
if something's not working in your classroom, don't keep doing it. Like, you
yeah,
have to shift it, and so that was a learning lesson, like, that didn't work. I'm not gonna do that anymore, but it is a bummer.
that is. Let's talk about big behaviors.
Yeah,
Big behaviors,
yeah,
right? So when I think about big behaviors, I think about a student cursing out a teacher. I think about desks being flipped and the classroom being destroyed. I think about violence toward the educator in the classroom or any educator on campus.
mhm.
Um, what do you do with those behaviors, and how do you help educators with those type of behaviors?
That is a tricky question because it still comes down to that relationship
Hmm.
and it still comes down to people have to have that perspective shift that kids are not doing things on purpose to try to hurt people. They are dysregulated. They're in their brainstem. They are not we call him Chuck in our little program because we have like little characters to go around. But Chuck is in charge of their brains, and um, they are not accessing problem solving skills in that moment. So all of the proactive stuff that I talk about has to be done in order to see a decrease of the behavior. Once the behavior happens though, I stop talking. Like I use a visual. So there's on your podcast there was a question about social emotional learning, and part of that is that self-regulation. And so every single day we practice things when we're regulated, because then when we're dysregulated our body remembers it a little bit. So we will practice using that break space when we're regulated, and we make like movies about it, we make a visual, like it's a whole production. And then they watch it every day, and then they actually practice it every day, and eventually that tapers off, but at first that's, it's a daily practice. And then when those big behaviors start happening, adults get into like trying to problem solve in that moment. And you cannot problem solve in that moment. Your job is to try to put out the fire and to regulate them. And using visuals and going nonverbal yourself is really an important part of that. And just holding that space of, I'm not afraid of you. You don't have to puff up and you don't have to shrink down. You just like hold that safe spot. Like, I am not afraid of you,
Right.
and I am not angry with you. I'm right here, and this is how we take care of our feelings. And it's so effective. It sounds so simple, but it's really effective. But you have to have that like before piece.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It does. That's you're describing what I do.
Yeah.
So you're describing exactly what I do. So like if I go in the classroom and there's a student who's upset and they're flipping tables or whatever, I don't say much. I
Right.
go in there. I don't say much. I just kind of stand in the way. The point that you made of like I'm not afraid of you. Yeah, you gotta stand your ground.
Right.
I go in the classroom. I stand there. I'm not like, oh,
Right.
everybody. I'm not scared. I'll
Right.
walk straight up to the student
Right.
and I'll just stand there. They'll feel my presence.
Right.
They'll calm down. I'm like, hey, let's go outside.
Right.
Go outside.
Like it's the balance of like, I don't have to become aggressive, I don't have to get bigger, but I
Hmm.
don't have to shrink either. And I think that they truly respond to that.
Yeah,
And saying like, we've practiced those skills before, so, and I have the relationship, so I'm a safe
yeah.
person that's holding up that reminder for them.
That's a good
And
point.
we don't budge until we go take care of our feelings in the safe space. And then after, that's when we start our problem solving, and I use collaborative problem solving. So that looks like, hey buddy, like math got really hard today, tell me about it, what happened? And
Yeah,
then helping dose them with, how do we solve that problem? Like, how do you think? And at first, a lot of these kids are not used to adults asking for their opinion.
yeah,
They're used to being given plans and direction, and it's
right.
all very compliance focused. And so it's uncomfortable for a minute, and you'll hear a lot of like, I don't know. And
Mhm.
so I'll start modeling like, well, like, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if I'm right. Like, maybe the math was too hard. Like, nope, that wasn't it. Like, and model what that looks like to sort of unpack your problem and then come up with some solutions. And then we've tried some pretty wacky solutions because that student came up with that solution.
Yeah,
And then sometimes they have worked. Sometimes I've been surprised that it worked. And then sometimes it didn't. And then we can circle back with like, well, we tried that. Like, what went wrong there?
yeah,
And what can we try next? And then that repair piece. So if I've had a student that has taken down objects from a classroom, after we've regulated, after we problem solve, after we've practiced the new plan, then we're going to go fix the mess that we made. So we're going to go back and we're going to put the things back up on the wall, or we might have like a reconnection with a teacher if they were aggressive towards another teacher, and have that restorative conversation. So it's like a whole process. It's not just it happened and we're moving on and that's it. Like it's I don't know, it's meaningful intervention, not just. I feel like I hear a lot of teachers say like, well, they just go to the principal's office and they get a lollipop, and like that shouldn't be the case. I mean, if give them a lollipop if you want a lollipop, like, but it should be a whole, a whole circle thing that
Yeah,
happens.
that's exactly right. Like when I get a student, like I said, I'll ask them to go outside. We'll go down to my office, and we'll just sit for a while, and I
Yeah,
won't say nothing.
right,
And I might say, "Are you thirsty? I
right,
got a water bottle. You want some drink?" And they'll tell me yes, tell me no,
right,
and then I'll just wait a little bit until I could see that, okay, they're ready. And I'll ask
right,
them, like, "Can you tell me what happened? I
right,
wasn't there. I didn't see what happened. Can you just share your viewpoint?" And then they share, and then I'll be like, where do you think you created some harm? Did you create harm at all? Oh yeah, I did this and I did that. Okay, well, how are you gonna repair that harm?
right,
What are you gonna do to fix that? Okay. And then, I hold them accountable too. I'm like,
right,
there are consequences for your behavior, natural
right.
consequences and consequences I give you. I just want you to know that.
Yeah,
And I'll go to that piece as well. But it's always calm. It's always until they're regulated, and
right.
and we move forward. And I do let them choose how they're gonna repair it, just like you
Right.
were saying.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's the growth, right? Like, just suspending kids or just kicking kids out of class, like, there's no growth there.
Mm-mm.
So,
Nope.
like, legally, you can't just, like, kick kids
No.
out of school, right? So, that feels like a very short-term Band-Aid solution, that only causes more disconnection between the
Right.
student and the teacher. And so if there's a consequence, like, it should be a natural consequence that teaches them something so that you can decrease those behaviors, because
Yeah.
just suspending kids doesn't teach them anything. If some of these kids that have impact from trauma, if suspending them worked, it would work.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we wouldn't even be having this conversation on
Yeah.
TikTok right now because it would be working, because kids get suspended all over the place. That's why we're trying to shift to something different, something more
Yeah.
effective.
Yeah. Because when I think about suspension, um, okay, so students who get suspended are students with difficult behavior, and if you're suspended, then in my opinion, um, you're not scared of many people. You're not scared of the principal. You're not scared of the assistant principal. You probably run your own household. You probably run the show at home. These are the things I
Or
think
you have an
about.
abusive home that,
You might have an abusive home as
right,
well, so you get suspended. Um, and you're not afraid of suspension. Like, I feel like people hold suspension over other kids, like, a as a way to scare them into, following instruction. But
right,
these students who are getting suspended aren't scared of that.
yeah,
Like your average student, if you tell your average student, "Hey, if you do that, you're gonna get suspended." "Oh, no, no, okay, I won't do that anymore," or whatever. If that's your method of trying to control difficult behavior, right?
right,
But these students who are getting suspended, they don't care, like, they don't care, they're not afraid. "Yeah, suspend me, so what? Suspend me." They go home, they're whatever, gone for a certain amount of days, they come back, and now you got that same student, now what? Now what are you
yeah.
gonna do as an educator? What are you gonna do? How are you gonna you have that same student, he was just gone for 2 days.
Yeah,
Now
you know what I think, the don't care? I don't know if it's like a don't care though. Like, I think it's like, if you're used to being the problem, whether you're the problem at home, right? If you have an abusive home environment or a neglectful home environment, and that shows up in school, I assume that's kind of who we're talking about. Like, kids that are impacted from trauma versus disability is a little bit easier for people to wrap
yeah,
their brains around. But kids that have impact from trauma, it looks like defiance, it looks like apathy. But it's really just like, I don't have anybody who cares about me. Why should I care? Like, why, and so then you act out behaviorally and then you get kicked out. Like, well, yeah, that's what happens. That's, you know what I mean? Like, think about, like, every meaningful relationship that you have had. If that person gave up on you every single time, you don't care about them either.
yeah.
That's how, like, I use the bucket system, and granted I have younger children, but it's really like trying to teach kids that, like, we all impact each other,
Yeah.
and so we're all interconnected. So if I don't care about you and I just suspend you to, like, get you out of the way, you don't care about me and we don't have a functioning relationship, and then
Mhm.
I continue to have difficult behavior in my classroom, and you continue to have feel like nobody cares about you, and, like, it's just a hamster wheel that happens,
Yeah.
and I feel like we're the adults, like, we have
Yeah.
to get off the hamster wheel.
My point was that, like, some people use this as a fear tactic.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
Some people use it as a fear tactic. Like,
Right,
okay, I'm gonna suspend you, and
right,
oh no, I'm gonna get suspended.
right,
Now I'm scared, and now I'll follow directions because you said I'm gonna get suspended.
right,
Or the idea of, I've seen this happen. We're gonna call school police. School
right,
police is gonna come in here. Now there are kids that don't care if school police comes. There are kids. I worked at a middle school, high school. They don't care. They're like, so what? Call school police. I don't care. W- You're not gonna fear me into trying to follow whatever you're trying to
right,
get me to follow.
right.
You could say I'm gonna get suspended. You could say you're gonna call school police. You could do all those things to try to use these fear tactics to get me to comply. But I'm not scared of that.
Right.
I saw though, I would see this and I'm like, there's got to be another way. This does not work.
Mhm.
What you're doing right now, saying he's gonna suspend us, saying school police is gonna come. Do you see him? It's
Right,
not working. It's
right,
not. So now
right,
what? What do we do
right,
next?
right.
That's what
Right, because there's kids that they don't follow rules, they follow people.
right,
So
right.
and, like, those kids that are not responding to that system, those are your people followers, and
Hmm.
so they need the people in the system to create those relationships and help build those skills.
Right. I always say that students with difficult behavior follow people before they follow any rules.
Yep,
All the
100%,
time. All the
100%.
time. When I was a dean of students, like this was, when I was a classroom teacher, I taught for 18 years, 18 years. Never had any real big behavior problem because I built relationships with the students.
Mhm.
And so like, I could just be like, "Hey, sit down, sit
Right,
down," and they knew that I was a safe person.
right,
They trusted me, and they're like, "Oh, my bad, Mr. Vergara. I'll sit down.
right.
We're good. We're fine." So
Right,
like, it was that easy. It was that easy for me because I
right.
built relationships, and they knew that I cared about them, and I wanted the best for them.
Yeah,
Then
yeah,
when I was a dean, I saw like there's 25 teachers at this school. You see everything. You see the relationships that they build with their kids, and some do a great job and some
right,
need help. And
right,
the ones that need help are the ones where all the difficult behavior come from.
right,
That's
right,
why I'm in these classrooms all the time. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Here we go again.
right,
Um, and you see that and you're like, man, if they just would build some
right,
relationship,
right.
just start there. Like let's
Right, like,
yeah,
it's so simple. It's so simple that I think that people that are skeptical are like, "Nope, not that simple."
yeah.
And, like, but it is. But I mean, it really is.
And
Not that creating interventions and planning can't be complex, because that can be complex, particularly the more complicated the disability, or if
yeah,
they're in active
yeah,
trauma, they might not be accessing the skills that you're working on, but really at the end of the day, it's pretty I feel like when I tell people what I do, they're like, and what else?" I'm like,
yeah.
"That's it." That's
And that's not to say that that even though you build relationships with students, they still act up.
for
This
sure.
it's
Yeah,
still
for
gonna
sure,
happen. It's still gonna happen,
for sure.
and you just manage it differently, or
Right,
and I want to put that disclaimer out there, that
right.
you still will have difficult behavior, but the way that it's get managed and the way that it's handled, it's just
Yeah,
I don't know,
Yeah.
it's better.
And it will be less, and so
It'll be that.
if your goal is for it to be less, like, I keep finding myself thinking, like, what is the goal here? Like, because if there's something that I don't understand, I'm gonna go looking for, like, how to understand it. I'm gonna look to learn more about it if it's a disability. That I had a kid that had, dysgraphia, and so he would have an escalation every time during writing, but his writing was immaculate, so I could not figure out what was happening,
Mhm.
what the trigger was, because I hadn't yet had that experience with the student. And
Yeah,
so then he got diagnosed, and so I did all of the research to try to figure out what that looks like and what support is going to help him, because I didn't have that experience. So I just wish we could normalize it's okay if you don't know something. Like, we're not supposed to know everything.
yeah,
And a lot of what I do is they don't teach you in teaching programs, not even in special education teaching programs, how to deal with behavior.
mhm,
That's just something that, it's been throwing things at the wall to sort of see, like, what it is or what helps. And so I think it's just, I wish it was, I don't know, I wish it was safer for teachers to just admit, "I don't know how to do this," because I think letting down that, like, defensiveness might open up some, you know, some better possibilities.
yeah. I mean, so, like, you if we talk about bringing kids out of the classroom and de-escalating, but if you're in the classroom, right, you're in the classroom and they're flipping chairs and you're the classroom teacher, or let's not go that dramatic. Let's just say the kid's out of seat
Yeah.
and they don't want to follow directions. They're just walking around and going through some stuff and they just want to
Yeah.
follow the teacher's directions. What can teachers do with that type of behavior? What would you suggest for them to do? And I know
Well,
it's, yeah, starts off relationship first, but
no, I think I wish that every single teacher, particularly in the elementary grades, had a calm down space in their classroom. And we're really working on destigmatizing mental health, so that, because, like, when that happens in my classroom, I can say a quick, like, oh, they're having big feelings, we're going to continue on with our work. And then it's a little bit of ignoring it, instead of trying to force that compliance. and
yeah,
then and then I'll sort of dose with, like I said, the visual of the, like, remember, we take a break if we're having a hard time with something. um, but I don't give it too much air.
yeah,
So even if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, if I make a big scene about it, it's gonna blow up pretty big. Um, and and I think what I also showed to those other students is that I think that teachers think that they're keeping control of their classrooms when they do that, but I think it's actually the opposite. I
mhm,
think that you're showing those kids that you don't have control over the situation, and your feelings are getting big and you're dysregulated, and all kids need to feel safe with their teacher. So even if there's something sort of bananas happening in the corner, it's fine. You're safe, and they all know that somebody's just having a hard time, not being not it, that it's not a threat to them, like, they're not being traumatized by that experience. If it gets really big, we've had to do some room clears, from time to time, but
yeah,
those are, you know, few and far between that it really gets that big.
yeah.
Um, except when I was in the behavior program,
They do it
that's,
all the time.
yeah, like, that's a pretty common. Yeah.
Calm down corners is new for me. When I was a teacher, there was no such thing as calm down corners.
Right.
There's no, and when I was a dean, I never saw that happen either. But now, as an administrator, I see. I this year I saw two calm down corners at
Mhm.
our school. And how would you help teachers understand that calm down corners are an important piece of the puzzle of behavioral management or positive classroom environment? How would you help them see that?
Well, I think, that you're asking very complicated questions and have different directions I could go here. I think that they're like, if you accept that we are in a crisis and kids are in a crisis, then the next question as adult is like, well, how do we help kids if they're in a crisis? and we provide mental health support. And what's a non, I don't have to be a therapist to
Exactly.
be providing mental
That
health
would be the
support.
pushback.
Right, like, you don't have, I'm not doing therapy with any of my
Yes.
students, but I am teaching them self-regulation in the same way that as a parent, when you're teaching, like, your 4-year-old who's having temper tantrums, and I do not wanna necessarily, like, every student is having a temper tantrum, but it's that same idea of, like, it's your job to teach them how to take care of their big feelings, and so the calm down corner is one way, and if you incorporate it into your whole classroom system, it's not just for Johnny, it's for every single kid that's in your classroom
Yeah.
has access, and that's that destigmatizing. So it's not a timeout space for Johnny. It's a space that your whole classroom uses to self-regulate when things are getting hard.
Yeah.
And but it requires that perspective shift from a compliance lens to a trauma responsive lens, because if you're worried that he's missing 10 minutes of math because he's in the calm down corner, then for me your priority is not in the place where it needs to be, because if he's blowing out at math, then what's the harm in giving him 10 minutes in the calm down corner? It's
Yeah.
not your end game, but it's like a first step to, like, building that I can take care of my feelings. And then the other feedback, like I already referred to before, is like they send them out of class and you are doing the work,
Mhm.
right? Like, you
Yeah.
are doing the self-regulation, you
Yes.
are doing the conflict resolution skill building, you are
Yes.
doing that. And so they're also, like, abdicating their own authority to somebody else,
Right.
and then you are their safe person then,
Right. And
not their
yes.
teacher.
Yes. And that's a problem. That is
Right.
a problem. And it works out for me. I'm just gonna be
Right.
honest. It works out
Right.
for me. Like if you want to give me all of your difficult
Right.
problems, send them my way.
Right.
Me and these kids are gonna be good. And so
Right.
when I tell them something, when I ask them to do something, I'm not gonna get that pushback. Like you're gonna
Right.
get pushback.
Right.
I don't mind it. I know it's hard to tell an educator like, hey, you should try to solve this problem.
It's really
You
hard.
you solve this problem.
Right.
Because when you give them to me or you give her to me, um, then I'm the one that they look to now. I'm the
Right.
one that has, the control, the power, but I don't want your power.
Right.
You should have it.
Right. Right.
So how do you
Like,
tell
in
an
an
educator
ideal
that? How do you
world,
tell
like,
them
you would
that?
take over the class and let that teacher problem solve with the student versus kicking them out of class.
I
And
have a
then
mhm.
no, go ahead.
I have a hard time. Like I'll go into class. I'll go into a class and I'll see something and I will I like I will do my very best not to
Mhm.
intervene.
Mhm.
Don't want to intervene. I don't want to intervene.
Right.
Um, and I don't want to take away anybody's power. I don't want to,
Undermine anybody,
yeah, I
right?
don't wanna do any of that stuff. I don't want to intervene. And sometimes I'm like, dang, do something. Like, come on,
Mhm.
don't allow that. Like,
Right.
don't allow it. And that's such a tricky. And maybe if I was a more seasoned administrator, I would know how to better handle that situation with teachers.
Mhm.
But I'm not. This is my 3rd year. My 1st year, I felt like I was an imposter, so I had the whole
Right,
imposter syndrome my 1st
right,
year. So
right,
3rd year, I feel a lot better. But I have a hard time not intervening, and it
right.
bugs the hell out of me. I'm like, dang,
It's really tricky to give, like, other professionals
yes,
feedback, especially, like, when you can see it really clearly and it's kind of on them. That's really hard because everybody wants validation, right? Like, even
mhm,
teachers want to be validated, and that's really tricky when you're like, "Eek, it was kind of on you, that one."
yeah,
Like, if you had turned left instead of right,
yeah,
you'd probably end up in a different spot than you are.
yeah,
Um, I don't have any good answers for you there. It's
yeah,
tricky.
no. And the calm down corner. When I first saw the calm down corner, um, my first thought was like, okay, this calm down corner needs some rules and procedures here.
Yeah, it does. It needs structure too,
Needs
for sure.
It needs some structure for
Yeah,
sure. It's not something that you could do whatever you want in this corner. It
Yeah,
is like,
except
hey,
when I would say if you have a particularly explosive kid, if
yeah,
they take 20 breaks, let them take 20 breaks and then slowly taper it back.
yes,
You know what I mean? So, like, at the start of the year, if we have an explosive kiddo, they get unlimited breaks, and then as they learn those skills, we pull back and we pull back and we pull back, and now it's, do you need 1 minute, 2 minute, or 3 minutes? And,
yeah.
there's a lot of structure around it, but
If I were a classroom teacher now and I had to create a calm down corner, I would, I'd make it comfortable like they all do. They're all
yeah.
very comfortable. And then the structure would be like, okay, we're gonna have a timer. And that's
Yeah,
gonna be
we have a
visible
timer. Yep.
for everybody to see. It's like this big visible timer, and that's what we're gonna have right there. And
Yep.
these are the breaks that you could have this many minutes or this
Yeah.
many minutes.
Yeah.
And when you go in there, you need to look at me and you tell me I want this many minutes.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you thumbs up, like, okay, we're agreeing with
Right.
that. Or like, no, let's go with the other amount of
Right.
minutes. And I'd say these are the activities that you could do, this,
Mhm.
this, or this. This is what you're gonna do. And we practice it. We would practice it.
Yeah.
Like, all right, now you join the calm down corner. Show me
The
what you have to
practice
do.
is so important. It's so important.
Yeah, that's how but I don't think people do it like that. I see it like where and I've seen this on other people. I have conversations with a lot of different people, and it's more like, okay, I decided not to do my work and I'm just gonna lay here on the floor on my
Mhm.
back making loud noises
Mhm.
for 20 minutes.
Right.
And then once math is over, then I'm fine all of a sudden and I could go
Right.
back and sit down or I
Right.
don't see structure.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, if that's a good it's a good window for, like, if we're sleeping through math, something is hard about math, and then we can have that collaborative problem solving,
It's very
like, it doesn't work for us to sleep through math, but I can see that math is hard. Let's talk about what is hard about math and
yes.
see if we can come up with a solution that's better than sleeping through math.
Yes.
Versus like, "Get out of there, you're not allowed to be in there." Like, the way that you problem solve, you're still holding that boundary. We're not gonna sleep through math,
Yeah.
but I do wanna hear what is getting hard for you about math so I can try to help you figure out what you need to do in that moment. Do you need just a 3-minute break before math because you're just nervous about it? Or is it too high academically? Or can we not read the directions because our reading skills are too low? Like, there could be a
Yeah.
multitude of
Yes.
things under that. So it's really taking that time to really dig in there and have a conversation with
Right.
students.
And not too many people are willing to do what you just said.
Right.
Not too many people are willing to dig that deep. They're just not. You see educators, I just don't feel like people do that.
Right.
Find out what the behavior is. Let's
Right.
find out what it is and let's try to find solutions
Right.
to fix that.
Right.
And I don't see that so much.
I know.
That's where the problem that's where all the
I
problems
know.
are right there. Right there. And
And why? I don't know. I guess I don't know. I don't quite understand the why.
the- there's a I don't know. I try to think about the whys as well. Like why is it like this? And uh yeah, I why is it like that? Why I I'm gonna say one why would be let's say the social media.
Yeah.
I would say that if I'm on TikTok or anywhere and I see everybody quitting and I see people, I see a lot of negative TikToks that,
Right.
you know, I might be like, you know what? Screw teaching. Screw
Right.
this. Like, why do I
Right.
want why do I, why am I even in this profession? Did you see that teacher get beat up? Why I
Right.
don't want to get beat up? Did you
Right.
see somebody get their phone stolen? Their teacher got their phone stolen. Their
Right.
teacher, their car got keyed up by a student. Forget that. Like I'm not gonna do that. This is somebody else's problem.
Right. Right.
You see that that affects you. That
Yeah.
definitely affects you. So then you go to school and you're almost looking for stuff like that. Like
Right.
you're looking for that negative behaviors to validate, like, oh yeah, see that was
Right.
true. That's true.
Right.
So and then yeah, I don't that's one
Right,
reason.
like, if you listen, it just feels like when you listen to them, it makes it seem like all 20, and don't get me started on how many kids are in a class, that's a system problem, but all 25 to 30, depending on how outrageous your classroom is, all 30 students are like flipping desks and running around. And I don't think that that's actually true.
Mm-mm,
Like, I think
mm-mm,
there's probably a couple students
mm-mm,
who have higher needs. They probably have a para or a pull in push out model.
mhm.
That you probably have kids that have ADHD that are way more distractible and stuff like that. But I just feel like the hyperbolic sort of telling of these stories makes it sound like it's outrageous, and I don't think it's that outrageous. I
No,
think,
no, it's
and
not.
that's where, like, dysregulated adults, like, that's a dysregulated adult.
Yeah, so, like, I'll get comments in my stuff, like, they'll say stuff like, "Well, how I have 30 kids in the classroom, you expect me to build a relationship with 30 kids?" I'm like,
Like,
"No." Well, I'm like, "You don't have to build a close relationship with 30 kids." That's my
right,
answer.
right,
You have 30 kids. Out of those 30 kids, most of them will just need to do tier 1 stuff.
right,
Be a good person.
right.
Teach the
Like, be
curriculum.
kind, be
Be
nice, right,
kind, be nice.
right, like, low level,
Low
right.
level tier 1 stuff. Say hi,
Because
say
their
good morning.
emotional needs are being met by someone else, so they're
That's
not
right.
relying on that from
Right.
you.
So and that's easy. Anybody could do that.
Right,
There's a handful of students where you really have to dig
right,
a little deeper.
right,
So, it's not 30 students you're building this deep, deep relationship with,
right.
like a handful where
But
you're
also,
gonna
I have 20, it's not really that hard to build, like,
it's
it's not.
not. I have 220. I have
Right, like,
220
we only
and
have 5
I know all
relationships,
the students. I know 'em
right?
all. Yeah, so I know all, but just to, hey, you just need to build a relationship with just a few of them, deep
Right.
relationship. Like everybody,
They're
yes.
the ones that need it the most.
Yes. Yes, they do. They definitely need it the most.
Right.
So, teacher burnout, like how do we help with that? How does our conversation right now, how do we help teachers with teacher burnout? Is there help with that? Is that
I mean, I think that, I I feel like a broken record, but the proactive strategies
right?
are gonna help with burnout. So think about if your job was a firefighter, not even a firefighter, your job every day was to put out the fire on the stove every single day. Just put it out, put it out, put it out, put it out, put it out. You never get to find out why the fire is starting, or what things might be contributing to making the fire bigger. Is the gas
Mhm.
on it? Your only job is to put out that fire every day. That's going to burn you out. That's burnout. That's not, that you're in reactive, and there's only so long that you can stay there before you are burnt out. I don't have any answers for the systemic fires that are going on, except that those are the things that we should be talking about
Yes.
collectively.
Yes.
um but, like, really, like, I think teachers need concrete strategies, and I think they need to see it in action, and then I think the skeptical ones need to see it work before they're willing to shift their own perspective. So, even like just showing them how to hold up the visual in a crisis,
Mhm.
um, might not be something that they would even, like, instinctually, like, you know how to do it and I know how to do it, but if that's not your whole world, you might not know how to do that, and you would just do the sort of normal response of like, "Nope, nope, we're not gonna do that," and that
Mhm.
will trigger, we know that that triggers the behavior, but I feel
Mhm.
like it's probably a pretty typical adult response to
Yeah,
say, like, "No, stop doing that."
yeah.
And so, like, doing more modeling, like, I wish that PDs were really focused on the behavior support, not necessarily like a different curriculum that we have to figure out, or a different, like, role modeling how we're going to practice those strategies, and really, like, putting teachers into groups and, like, actively, in the same way that the kids need to practice those, like, the adults also need to practice those,
Right,
so they know what to say, they have a script
right.
to say when it happens.
Like, an easy thing to say is, I use all the time, "Hey, do you need something? What do you need?
Right.
What do
Right,
you need?"
right,
That's it. With the face that I'm having right here like this, like,
right,
"What do you need? How
right,
can I help you? What do you need?" Like
right.
that. Like,
My
that's
big
all.
one is like, "Your feelings are valid, buddy. How do we take care of them?" Like, I say it probably 20,000 times a day. "Your feelings are valid. Where do we take care of them?" And
Yeah.
then if they're like, "F you," I'll hold up my visual.
Yep. So, 3 t I always end my podcast, 3 tips
Yeah,
for future educators, what are some 3 tips? 3 tips you
I
would give?
thought about this, and it was really hard to come up with
Uh,
3. The first one, I'm gonna say, is form those
right.
relationships. Figure out those kids that need you to show up for them, um, and form it, work on it, and be that person that's doing the problem solving with them. Don't send them out of the classroom. Ask you to come cover their math stations if they're all independently. If you're not like leading something, if they're all working on something, can you be the adult in the room while I problem solve with this student? And that's the relationship building. um and then 2, I would say stay out of the staff lounge if it's getting toxic, including TikTok toxic. Like, if you have 5,000 people who are like, "Yeah, kids suck and it's parents' fault," like, back out, get out of there. Like, that's not going to help you. It's okay to vent when you need to vent, because it's a hard job and there are really hard days, and it's you should have trusted people that you can vent to. Strangers on the internet is probably not the most helpful group of people. Um which kind of leads into the third one, which is surround yourself and build a community of people who it's safe to vent with or cry with or swear with, whatever, but that are also solution focused people that will like let you have that space, and then also be like, how can I help? Like, how are we helping? And we can't stay in the negativity for too long or we drown. That
Yes.
got very dark. I
Yeah.
didn't know how to end that.
That's tough. Well, Karen, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I greatly appreciate your time and for sharing your wisdom with me and with everybody that watches this podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.